It all started with little me, from almost 2 years ago, chronically online and with a League of Legends fiction. Suddenly, hundreds of artists started appearing on my YouTube feed like crazy, and so, art piqued my interest. I ventured into eBay and found an artist 12 by XP pen in immaculate condition for auction. For only 40 bucks? It sounded way too good. At first I was a bit skeptical, but at the end I bid for it, and eventually I won the bet for 83.79 UK currency or $108.88 for the... At this point, I thought I was gonna get big scammed. I waited for 1 whole month for it to arrive, and it finally did. So I quickly opened the package and there it was. Actual perfect condition. After 17 bows to whoever sold this to me, I tried it out and I was shit. Obviously. Never took an art class and had never been interested until now. Watch how it turned this into this over the next 100 days. Anyways, enough intro, let's get to the video. Jump to the 16th of October 2024. I had not improved much, and this frustrated me, along with having very little motivation for drawing. I had also always kind of wanted to do content creation, so if there was only a way to draw and do content creation while getting live motivation, streaming. By streaming art, I could have people to talk to, and if I don't do art, then those people burn me at the stake. So I speedrun making a VTuber model and a channel, and the day arrived. 30th of October. Before we begin, I want to clarify that the start of the 100 days were pretty chaotic, and some content might be missing since I didn't know if I was even going to finish this thing. My big concern was where to start, until I found this 1-year art plan by Mark Brunet. He has been one of my main motivational factors, so definitely check his channel. I started the challenge by doing gesture drawing. This is the exercise that by far I have done the most, so you better get acquainted with it. Apparently, it is really good, and it works. 100% will recommend. The page I have been using for all my poses is called Line of Action, and they have a quick 15-minute tutorial to teach you how to use the line of action, which is the line that determines the flow or direction of a pose, giving it a lot of dynamism. From days 2 to 15, I kept doing poses, and according to the first one of the tutorial that I showed you before, I had to do 30 plus poses. But by this point, I had already done over 100 poses. My last assignment for this month was studies of art you like. And I was just staring at that like, what the fuck do you mean studies of art you like? So I looked on Mark's channel again and found a learn how to draw faces in 30 days. And that's what I did, but in record time. The next few days were basically doing daily gesture drawing and the faces tutorial, Lumi's method, a character head, and some extra sprinkles of random tutorials and boredom on top. Quick shout out to the poses I did on days 16 and 17, because I felt especially proud of these at the time. I don't know if it's because I was experimenting with different brushes or I was just inspired that day, but I think these turned out pretty well. I also tried doing a little bit of perspective on day 23, but that's the most that I did. By this point in the challenge, I started doing some research on the 1-year tutorial I was following, since I did feel like some months on the tutorial were slightly vague. So I decided to take a drawing course. I'm not saying you should take one, because you can 100% learn art by the thousands of sources out there in the internet, but I needed this stability for me to keep going. On day 24, I drew some cylinders, to get used to drawing simple shades on my tablet. I also relearned how to place a line of action on top of poses, then drawing a rough skeleton on top of the figure. And you might be saying, but dude, you're redoing things that you already learned, aren't you losing your time? No. After all these 100 days, I have realized that you really never have enough of the fundamentals. They're always useful and, even without realizing it, improve your art. So here I am, doing more fundamentals such as curved lines, circles, pen pressure, straight lines, blending, and much more. On day 26 again, more fundamentals, poses, and basic skeletons. This day, I did some 30-second poses and 1-minute long poses. These posed quite a challenge, since going from 2-minute poses to only having a quarter of the time felt scary. I also did the line art for an illustration I liked, and chose this one from Tyron Fiddler, a super amazing creature artist that inspires me a lot. I also tried shading it a bit because I wanted to give it a try. Day 28 was basically the same. 30-second poses and 1-minute poses. Just not line art this day. Ooh, I like this one over here. More poses and another lightly shaded line art study by Taran Fiddler. I swear to other artists. I wanted to do a little celebrations for having done 1 month of the challenge. So I asked chat what they wanted me to draw, and there was only one chatter, so I drew her and she asked for a dragon, of which I can't find a reference of. This was a big day because I jumped into learning the proportions of the male and female body. You can see how happy I was to have finished the tutorial. Guess what? More body proportions. And the day after? More body proportions. And the day after that? Even more body proportions. I basically had to do these over and over again until I had memorized the stupid proportions for both sexes. And I had engraved them into my brain cells over the last few days. I was getting faster at doing them, so this day poses were also done. 30 seconds and 1 minute. But it seems like I didn't have enough this day because I also did some cubes in perspective. Too. I learned the basics of 1, 2, and 3-point perspective. I did 2-minute poses and learned about encaje? How to say this in English?
Lace in art.
What? Anyways. Fitting, I think it's called. And also some basic bodies from imagination. So I think I did pretty well on these. Some more 2-minute poses, some more fitting. A little bit of 2-point perspective, and here starts my trying to do the line art of League Illustrations arc. I tried doing the line art for this skin for Rengar, and I think it didn't turn out pretty bad. Next day was exactly the same. Poses, fitting, perspective, and line art. This time it was pizza delivery silver. And the same with the next day. Poses, fitting, perspective, and line art. This one is Shanghai Scrolls Lilia. This is when I finally stopped dropping atomic line art bombs and chilled down a little bit by just doing some poses for the day. Days 42 and 43 were doing some primitive shapes practice. This time 5-minute gesture drawing so I could add more detail. But this is not the big thing. I had to draw one of the rooms of my house in 1-point perspective and maybe add some sci-fi stuff to it. This one took a while. Next day, more 5-minute poses and primitive shapes. And here I tried doing the line art, but for a background this time. Day 45 was the same as last day. Some primitive shapes and 5-minute poses, and ended it with another lightly shaded line art. And the same for the next day too. Shapes, poses, line art. From days 47 to 49, I basically had a free week, in which I could do whatever I wanted, so I did some emotes for my Twitch channel. And the next 3 days, I tried doing a character that I really liked the design of. Is this furry bait? I don't know, man. Days 53 to 54, I did 2-minute poses and a 2-point perspective street view that turned out meh. But it was my first time doing it, so I guess it's not that bad. Plus, more line art for a background. More gesture drawing and 2 more line arts for different environments. On days 56 and 57, I watched 2 theory videos. One was about visual communication in art, and the other one was about using Photoshop for basic graphic design. I'm not very interested in the latter. I hate it, in fact, but it is part of the course and will probably still be used for me in the future. On day 58, I had to do a self-portrait. The thing is that you couldn't use a photo of yourself. You had to use a mirror in front of you. And I didn't have any mirrors at home, so I had to use this very small one that I borrowed from my mom and stuck to the drawing tablet. So, with this god-crafted setup and 3 hours of my time, I ended up with this. Day 59, I was not feeling it, so I tried doing some Loomis and gave up. But the next day, I came back stronger than ever, because I ate up another 4-hour video about head anatomy and facial features. Day 61 started with 2-minute poses, some Loomis method practice, and an introduction to basic shading and blending on different shapes. The next 2 days were basically doing the same thing over and over. I would start the day by doing some 2-minute poses, then I would do some Loomis method practice, and would top of the day with replicating the line art from different artists that I liked. On day 65, I did some 10-minute poses and a lot of head exercises, Loomis, different face features. You can tell I did this without reference, huh? And lastly, some portrait studies. I tried shading them a little bit, but this is as far as I could go. My notes from that day say, overall, I felt really proud of this day's result. and I agree. Well done, past me. The next day was essentially the same. 10 minutes, some Loomis, portrait studies. And the day after, the same. 10-minute poses, and holy shit, I cooked! I don't know if I was inspired this day or something, but I still feel very good about this one. Day 68, I did some more poses, and honestly, I don't even know what the fuck this is. Pepito and Go Gak. Anyways. Next day I did some 3-point perspective practice and some primitive shapes. But on day 70, I tried doing a full background in 3-point perspective. This was made following a tutorial. I didn't actually make up the whole thing. Day 71 was more primitive shapes and Loomis method. Day 72 was 2 and 5-minute poses. Then I had to do a head construction without reference, so I did this. And he looks like he has a broom up his ass. I topped this day off by drawing the human body like before, but in 4-point perspective. This was a fucking pain. For me, day 73 was a big step up. I started realizing that by doing poses, I had unconsciously picked up the proportions and anatomy of the human body, and I was already getting more consistent at drawing faces. By the way, some of these had different hair originally. It's an exercise later that made me change them. Day 74 was literally the same, poses and faces. Again, this one used to be bald and I added hair to him. Day 75 was a quick day, just some 1-minute poses. Day 76 and 77 were all about hair. First some Loomis each day and then doing different hairstyles until I was satisfied enough. I also redid the 4-point perspective assignment because I wasn't really happy with the last one. In day 78 I did 3 sets of 1-minute poses and came back to drawing even more hairstyles. I also did another portrait study this day, and day 79 was no different. 1-minute poses and more hair. Seems like on day 80 I wasn't very motivated and only did some poses. I was burned out. And you know, it's okay to have ups and downs. Everyone is human, and taking it slow to gain momentum is completely fine. There have been uncountable days where I've wanted to give up, but as long as you keep going, progress is being made. Reaching a goal is 70% having the right mindset, and if I could do it, you can too. Maybe even better than me. Day 81 and 82 were 2 quick rest days. I did some more emotes from my chat and then kept going with the challenge. I just did some poses and that was my day. I still had bits left of the burnout but kept going nevertheless. Day 84 was a cool one. I started by doing some warm-up poses and primitive shapes and then had to do a fantasy monster / creature, so I did this guy, the Mycolumo. It's basically a blind tortoise / dinosaur that has fluorescent mushrooms on their bodies and uses them to attract small insects and feed them. I didn't really like how this one turned out. It sounds really good on paper, but it's something about the design that feels off. And finally, on day 85, I had to do another self-portrait, and oh boy did this one turn out so much better than the other one. Studying all that face anatomy and Loomis method and whatever really did pay out. Just look at the difference side by side. This one looks like me. This one doesn't, like, at all. My confidence was boosted, only to be shattered by faults. Help me. So I watched the 4-hour-long tutorial on the theory behind faults and called it a day. Back to head studies, huh? This is what I have for the day. A couple poses and a try of head studies. This day I did some warm-up poses and then a bunch of headline arts. Some were more iffy than others, but overall not too shabby. Now that you've reached this far into the video, I want to thank you for doing so. This is my first ever video on YouTube, and I put a lot of time and effort into it. So I would really appreciate it if you could help me by spreading the word if you want to see more of this kind of content. Thank you! On day 90 is when I really started applying that faults video from a couple days ago. First doing a warm-up and then trying to shade specifically the clothes on different models. This kept going for a couple days, with some different things added on top like head or background studies. Day 94 was a bit more complete since not only did I do a faults render, I also did poses, a headline art and a background. All of that only to be burned out the day after and only do some poses. Since this was more recent, I can say that lately I've been trying to make my daily poses more fluent and with fewer lines to make them look much cleaner. Less lines, but with more meaning. The next day I had to do a very interesting exercise, which was drawing clothes on top of people that didn't have clothes on. I also did the line art for different clothes. These felt really useful because I was unintentionally learning how faults worked in different types of textiles. Day 97 was a weekday. Just 2 poses and that's it. Here you can already see that I'm putting much more effort in making the poses look fluent and cleaner, with less lines but more flow. This day I also did the exercise from before, of putting clothes on top of nude people, and also did some more line art for clothes. Day 99 was nothing too big either, just a bunch of mindful poses. And finally, day 100. Just some quick poses and that's it. Okay? But before I end the video, let me say something real quick.